Hey everybody, welcome to Lore Friday. DM Gallibond here, and this time we are going to be looking at the adventures and encounters in Chapter 4 from Out of the Abyss. It's going to take several videos to get through all of Gracklstugh, so I'm going to tackle a different district in each one. In this video, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the city of Gracklstugh and what the PCs will find when they arrive in the city. Okay, the theme of this particular adventure is to uncover clues about the madness spreading throughout the Underdark. The setting of this adventure, of course, is the Duergar city of Gracklstugh, and that is located on the shore of the Darklake. The hook for this particular adventure is the party travel to Gracklstugh, and they find opportunity along with danger. Fault lines within the factions of the city could allow the PCs to gain some wealth, some power, and potential allies to combat the madness that's threatening everything in the Underdark. Most of the races that call the Underdark home don't like surface folk very much, and the Duergar are no exception. Like all dwarves, they have a love of gold and of crafting things. Thus, Gracklstugh, the City of Blades, is a trade hub between the races of the Underdark and those of the surface world. I'll warn you now, this video has a bit of exposition and fancy politics, but because a DM needs to know what's going on in the city prior to running the series of adventures in this campaign, I think it's really important to understand how all of these pieces work together. The Duergar of Gracklstugh allow drow into the city, but they don't trust the Dark Elves very much. So finding a way to get hired by one of the native factions and thus getting into the city proper and out of the foreign district is a really good way to throw off drow pursuit. But this means finding work first. And the only place that the PCs are going to be able to do that is, you guessed it, the Darklake district. That is the foreign quarter, if you will. And the next video we do is going to focus all on the Darklake district and what happens there. So the quietest and easiest way to enter Gracklstugh is via the docks on the edge of the Darklake. If the PCs fled Slubluddop in a boat and escaped the notice of Demogorgon while he was destroying that city, they might eventually come to the docks of Gracklstugh by that route. Otherwise, if they reach Gracklstugh via one of the tunnels, they will likely be escorted through the city and deposited in the Darklake district, unless they give the Duergar guards cause to haul them off to the dungeons under the king's palace, or take them to the slave markets of the city. So it's worth noting here that all the Duergar have two innate magical abilities. The first is that they can become invisible. So invisible Duergar guards are all over the city, and it's reasonable to determine a percentage roll that the PCs are spotted by an invisible guard if they start trying to sneak around or do something rash. Now, what percentage that is, that's up to you. There's no guidance given in the campaign, so you are free to make that up on your own. The second ability that all Duergar have is that they can enlarge themselves as the spell. So that means that in their enlarged state, they hit harder and they hit more often due to increased strength. Now, since the population of Gracklstugh is nearly all Duergar, it would be very unwise to make enemies of the locals if the PCs can help it. If the party starts acting foolishly, a kind of benevolent DM might have other non-Duergar try to talk them out of their plans for the sake of all the foreigners in the city. Oh, you say you're not that kind of DM? Never mind them. We'll let the PCs find out how much trouble they can get in. Alright, so Gracklstugh has many different factions. I'll provide some brief notes on who these factions are and what they do. Some of these factions are a faction of one individual for various reasons, so keep that in mind. And the first faction is just that, a faction of one. And this is Deep King Duergar Steelshadow V. He is the absolute monarch of Gracklstugh, and his ruling style is to keep all of the other factions suspicious of and mistrusting of each other, so that none of them can gain very much political power. That means that the king is allowed to continue operating as the sole monarch without anybody. Most of the other factions are clans of Duergar, and each of them is led by an elder with the title of Laird. And then that leads us to the second faction, which is the Council of Lairds. The Council of Lairds is an advisory body made up of lairds from the various clans that the king listens to whenever it suits him, and he ignores whenever he wants to. So nonetheless, they are considered part of the government by most of the common people of the city. The next set of factions is the Duergar clans. So there are some 20 different clans of Duergar that function similarly to the trade guilds in Waterdeep. These clans are grouped together by the kind of industry and work that they do, such as smithing, mercantile, mining, and other important commercial concerns. Then we come to a faction called the Council of Savants. Now, this is the governing body of Gracklstugh's Darrow population. Now, Darrow are a weird and kind of pitiful race with a horrifying origin story. By racial stock, they're not quite gnomes, and they're not quite dwarves. And somewhere in their dark, deep, ancient past, they were created as genetic experiments by the Illithids in the Underdark, so by the Mind Flayers. This means that every last member of the Darrow race is insane to one degree or another. Now, a scant few have the genius of a criminal mastermind, and those individuals use cunning, guile, and magic to influence members of some of the Duergar clans. And this is one of the undercurrents that the PCs might begin to uncover if they stay in Gracklstugh for any length of time. Then you have, as another faction, the Merchant Council. Now, the Merchant Council governs trade, and perhaps they are the most pragmatic of the Duergar when it comes to dealing with outsiders. They're always looking to increase trade, and they will willingly hire outsiders as caravan guards for merchants traveling to other destinations. Now, a couple of merchants are on the lookout for adventurers to complete some tasks, and so it's through these merchants that the PCs may begin to find some of this steady work that they can earn in Gracklstugh. The next faction is the military. The military is composed of clan guards and some special units with additional training. Now, these units include the Stone Guard, who are the king's bodyguard, the Dark Halves, who are psionic secret agents of the king, the Cavalrachni, who are a cavalry force that ride steeders, and the Zerorn, and these are specialists trained in fighting with the flame lances. Now, a captain of the Stone Guard might employ adventurers either who have been captured or who have gained some favor with the Stone Guard, and she needs adventurers to do some tasks for her. And again, working for this captain is yet another way that they can find employment, and also how they can begin to see some of the things happening under the surface in the city here. Another faction of the city is Clan Cairmgorn. There's a small enclave of stone giants living in Gracklstugh. They're generally quiet, contemplative, and peaceful, and they are here based on an ancient treaty made with Clan Steelshadow, which is the king's clan. They're led by a cleric of Scoreus Stonebones, who is the god of the stone giants. This cleric is called the Stone Speaker, and he's one of the few people in leadership within Gracklstugh that has a sense of something gone wrong in the Underdark, and that someone needs to try to fix it. He has some tasks and a pretty cool magic item for the PCs if they can find him and work with him to discover what has caused the demon incursion into the Underdark. Then we come to another really interesting faction, which is called the Keepers of the Flame. Now, these are a bizarre faction of psionic clerics that supposedly advise, venerate, and serve the Wormsmith. However, the Wormsmith has started to suspect that they're not exactly what they seem to be. Now, they have recently lost something that's very valuable to them, and they will pay someone, outside adventurers like your party, to recover it for them. And I mentioned that the Keepers of the Flame work with the Wormsmith. The Wormsmith is another one of these factions of one. The Wormsmith is a faction composed solely of Themberchaud. Now, Themberchaud is an adult red dragon. And as it turns out, Themberchaud is only recently reached his adulthood. And he's beginning to suspect that his so-called advisors have a sinister ulterior motive. Themberchaud will also pay the adventurers to spy on the Keepers of the Flame and to find and destroy the valuable item that they have lost. Now we come to one of the more enigmatic factions within Gracklstugh, and these are the Grey Ghosts. The Grey Ghosts are the Thieves' Guild of Gracklstugh. Their former leader stole something from the Keepers of the Flame, but he was caught and he was executed before he told pretty much anyone where that item was hiding. It's up to the players to figure out where this guy may have hidden what both the Wormsmith and the Keepers of the Flame are looking for, and then they have to decide what they want to do with it. Because there's really three things they can do with it. They can take it to the Grey Ghosts, they can take it to the Keepers of the Flame, or they can destroy it for the Wormsmith. It's all a matter of who do you want mad at you. Because in any case, somebody's going to be happy with you, and a couple other people are probably going to be angry at you. And finally, we have a faction called the Empty Scabbard Killers. Now, this is a guild of psionic assassins who are so secretive that not many even believe they really exist. They kill with blades that are made from psionic energy, thus the name of their guild. And they can be a wild card in the adventure depending on whether or not they are deployed and what the target of the Empty Scabbard Killers happens to be. There is another danger of Gracklstugh, and that is the air itself. The great forges of the city spew forth smoke and soot all the time, which makes the air hazy, thick, and potentially deadly. A condition called Grackle lung causes coughs and wheezing, and on a failed daily constitution check, this can trigger levels of exhaustion within the PCs. And if enough checks are failed in a row without the intervention of magical healing, the condition can eventually kill someone by raising the exhaustion level high enough. The most common enemies that you're going to find in this particular adventure are, of course, Duergar, because it's a city of Duergar. The toughest potential encounter that you will have in this section is you might meet the Wormsmith himself, Themberchaud, who's an adult red dragon, CR 17. And his role as the Wormsmith is he goes around to all of these forges and he uses his flame breath to keep the forge fires lit. That's another kind of special thing about Gracklstugh is all of the forges of the city that make all of these weapons and all of this other metal craft, they are all kept alight by dragonfire. So that's kind of a unique and interesting way that the dragon is used in this particular adventure here. So special creatures or items, the party first come across beasts of burden known as steeders here. Steeders are giant tarantulas native to the Underdark. Now, male steeders are as large as ponies and are used as pack animals, while females are the size of horses and serve as Duergar mounts. And these steeders, they don't have the web feature of other giant spiders, but they have a sticky substance on their legs that allows them to climb like other spiders do, and allows them to capture prey by gluing them to their legs. My favorite elements of this adventure are the factions and the fault lines within Gracklstugh. The Underdark City is a trade hub of both Underdark and surface races, and it has almost as many factions as Waterdeep does. And due to the influence of the madness being spread by some of the demon lords that have been displaced into the Underdark, tensions and frictions between those factions are growing stronger every day within the city. Now, the interplay between the various factions can serve as a great template for a DM that wants to build a city within his or her campaign world that has lots of complicated cooperation, competition, subterfuge, and deceit going on between its various trade guilds and governmental divisions. So it's a very neat thing. If you study it, you can take that and you can sort of see how you might build, different types of groups that have different sort of motivations depending on whatever's going on in your campaign world, but you can kind of make that task a little bit easier by seeing how these different factions all intersect, some of them cooperating, some of them at odds, some of them seeming to cooperate while they're secretly working against each other, and all this sort of stuff. The easiest homebrew adaptation for this adventure is this city could be relocated to the surface in a mountainous area or located near a tectonic fault line in your world. The very rich variety of factions and races could easily be swapped with others, and some of the motivations and subplots would fit into many different types of campaigns. Using this with other editions is pretty easy because Duergar have been around for many editions, so you could use this with just about any edition of D&D that you wanted to. And that is going to do it for our look at going to Gracklstugh. Next time we come back, we are going to be focusing our look at the Darklake district. And if you have been watching for this long, I appreciate it very much. I also would love it if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, and click the post notification bell so that you get notified every time new content drops on the channel. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've appreciated this Lore Friday, and I hope we will see you again next time for another Lore Friday. Good night, everybody.